I came from a very dysfunctional family myself, which many of us have. And I ended up, a judge sentenced me to treatment at age 23. I still remember when he asked me, "Do you know that you're responsible for your own behavior?" And if I would have been honest, I would have said no.
Wow.
Because I never learned that. Nobody ever sat me down and said, if you do A, B will happen. I was not raised with cause and effect. You're just like your father. He's an alcoholic. I mean, the patterning taught me what to do. So I thought, well, mom doesn't love me, so I'll use drugs and drink, and then maybe I can find my dad and he'll love me. Well, that didn't happen either. So I just went about my own thing of becoming addicted, and I ended up in treatment, sent there by a judge when I was 23 years old. And I found everything I needed for the rest of my life in that treatment center. I found my spirituality. I found out what was wrong with me. I found out what I needed to do to heal and stay on a track the rest of my life. And I spent 8 months in treatment, and I didn't really even want to leave. It was like that was my true home. And my counselor, bless her soul, Ruth Anderson, I mean, she showed me such unconditional love when I was there. So, like many other recovering addicts, and the whole thing of recovery addiction was new to young people back then. I mean, it was on fire. Back in Minnesota, it was just AA was open to young people. Nobody was really talking about Al-Anon because that's not attractive.
That's not as sexy as having the rock bottom yourself.
Yeah. So I got out of treatment, and I was so inspired. I wanted to help other addicts the way my counselor had helped me, the way this program had helped me. I wanted to help them find themselves, their everything. Because really, if you're an addict, recovery is everything. So I started applying for, I went through the drill. I waited 2 years. I took a course at the University of Minnesota to become a counselor. But that was different times back then. That was in the early 70s. And there weren't that many women working in treatment, not in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I flash forward a few more months, I had met and was dating a man, David Beattie, by then. And he and his brothers had started most of the treatment centers in the state of Minnesota, not Hazelton, not any of those, but the therapeutic communities in different places. And so after watching me unsuccessfully try and get hired as a counselor, David said, well, talk to Lorraine, who ran their program at Eden House. And so I went to work for Eden House as a secretary. Oh. And one day Lorraine came in and she said to me, with our new government funding, unless we start doing something for the families of the addicts, we're going to lose our funding. And I looked at her, I said, visions of my mother crossed through my mind. I said, I don't know what to do with them. What would I do with the family members? I said, I'm new here. She said, well, we don't know either. And that's why you get the job. So she tasked me with
figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. So I did. And I took it very serious. It was never my dream to become the codependency lady. That was
that was not in your childhood.
That was not even in my adulthood dreams.
Yeah, I guess no one thinks like, oh yeah, I want to be known for healing codependency. At the time when you're in the grips or witnessing it, you're kind of like, I just want to be done with it.
I did. I just really, really wanted I wanted that part of my life to be over, but it didn't go away, and that magic that happens, they call it the wounded healer phenomena, began to take place in the groups. And I could hear while the women in the group were telling their stories, I could go, wow, my husband does the same. I could see the comparison in my own life on different levels. Like one woman had she had 5 kids, and her husband had been to prison 2 times, and she ended up dying of natural causes. She was just, her poor heart was so burnt out from all the pain, all the loss, and not knowing how to get out of it. And I kept thinking, kind of sounds a little bit like me and my marriage. I mean, I would hear those things with the stories they were telling about their deep unhappiness in the relationship. They're feeling trapped. They're not knowing what to do to get out. And again, remember, it was a very different time for people back then. Even relationship dynamics were much different. All you have to do is watch TV, Mary Tyler Moore from that time, and you'll see it. But slowly, I began to see patterns, and I became as obsessed with codependency as I had been with the alcoholic. I mean, I became absolutely obsessed with finding out, well, why does it happen? What happens? What do we do that keeps us doing it over and over? And what can we do that's different, that's better? What choices do we have? I became obsessed with everything about it. Just that's where my mind went with it. And 8 years later, I finally wrote and sold the book. I mean, it was a long-term dream that eventually came to pass.